with education, down with deportation. Up 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 with education, down with deportation.
Trump has made it clear. We will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats first. If you're in the country illegally, you shouldn't feel comfortable. Absolutely not. I won't feel comfortable if I'm in the country illegally. You shouldn't be comfortable either, because when you enter this country illegally, you have committed a crime. You are a criminal, and you're not off the table.
We played those clips back to back, opening the show on purpose, and we let that entire clip of Kamala Harris run the whole minute and change on purpose, because what did you hear over and over and over? Platitudes, a platitude. Up with education, down with deportation. I have no idea what that means. I don't think she has any idea what it means. The Democrat Party has no idea what it means. It certainly isn't having any relationship to law whatsoever. Down with deportation. In other words, if you're here legally under any circumstances, you can stay. That's all it says. Down with deportation. We're not going to support deportation under any circumstances. That's what it sounds like to me. And we juxtapose that with the video clip there of the soon-to-be czar of the border, a real border czar, Tom Homan. And this guy is an absolute bulldog on a ham hock. But he was pithy, he was clear, he was unassailable. Listen, our first priority is to get the criminals, the dangerous criminals, out of this country who should not be here in the first place. Not the only priority, not the only goal, but that's the first goal. That is the pinnacle of the strategy, is to get the most dangerous illegal immigrants out of this country right away. The contrast could not be clearer. And this is why the Democrat Party, and specifically Kamala Harris, got blown out in this election, because they are not focused on the rule of law. Welcome to Your Leo Nation. I am the Chief, Mark Garrett, and we are always here talking about the rule of law, how we can support it, how we can defend it, how we can enhance it. And I want to focus today, we're going to focus in on today just on this immigration issue, because look, quite frankly, folks, there were two issues in this recent election, and that was the economy and was immigration. Those were the two heavyweights in the political arena. And I think they were both ignored by the Democrat Party, but I'm going to focus here on the rule of law issue, and that is immigration. That is citizenship, or the lack thereof. So we have a lot of people across the state and across the country that are in positions of authority, elected officials, whether they're governors or mayors, whatever it is, that are pushing back against the plan of mass deportation by the incoming Trump administration. And there's so much that we could talk about. There's so many examples, comparisons over the last 50 years or 100 years or 150 years about the relationship between governors, specifically, not just governors, but governors, state governments, and the federal government. And as many of you know, the ones who listen to this show regularly, you know I am all about states' rights, but only in the box of the Constitution. The states should be autonomous on most levels, on way more levels, by the way, than I think we're seeing today. There's way too much federal government involved in the individual operations of state government. Absolutely. But again, that stops when it comes to the Constitution. States cannot violate the United States Constitution in the name of states' rights. That's where it stops. And the thing is, there are only a handful of things that really should impact states as far as the federal government. Only a handful of responsibilities and authorities the federal government should have. They have way too many on the books. But one of them is the protection of our borders. One of them is immigration citizenship status. That is one of the handful of identified, specified, articulated responsibilities and authorities the federal government has when it comes to the operation of states. States cannot violate that. They don't have the authority to do that, to bring people in and keep them there if the federal government wants them removed as far as illegal immigration is concerned. So with that said, I want to start with Pritzker, governor of Illinois. This guy's a real piece of work. Now, this is the guy. I'm not going to play that clip. This is the guy who says, "Hey, if you're going to come in here, you got to go through me." And boy, if you see Pritzker, that's quite a task to get through that mess. But that's a personal attack. My apologies. But I want to play this first clip here, and I'll talk to you about it. And I included some, fairly long clips, a minute and a half, because I want people to get the full context. I'm not cherry picking here. I want you to hear what these individuals say and what they apparently believe. Anthony, go ahead and play that first clip, Pritzker.
It is, as everybody should recall, let's not forget why we're seeing those buses. It's because there are these border politicians, the borders of the United States have politicians who want to cause havoc in the rest of the country. They could have raised their voices. They could have advocated in a political fashion for comprehensive immigration reform. But as you know, those are the very people who are opposed to comprehensive immigration reform. So instead, they want to wreak havoc. They want to cause a political challenge for the president and for, the people of the opposite party from them. And so I wanted to make sure that we were, that everybody understands who is causing this issue for states across the country. You don't see him sending anybody to Idaho. You don't see him sending anybody to South Dakota or Wyoming or Missouri, states that are controlled by the opposite part, by his party. Instead, he's sending them only to blue states.
There's so much to unpack here with Pritzker. Now, let me start with this. If you listen to this guy, he talks about, quote unquote, who's causing the problem. Now, first of all, what's he talking about here specifically? He's talking about buses coming in to his state, and I think Chicago specifically. We're going to talk about Chicago at the very end of this specifically. But he's talking about buses of illegal immigrants coming into his state from primarily from Texas. And he's saying that it's their fault. It's the red state fault, the fault of the red states. They're having these huge problems. And he's frustrated now. He's pissed off because they were overwhelmed with these busloads of illegal immigrants that are flooding his state right now. But he says it's the fault of the states that are sending the buses into his state. It's not the fault of Chicago. It's not the fault of Illinois, who call themselves a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city. It's not their fault. See, it's not their fault that they said, come, like Joe Biden did. Remember this? Before Biden got elected, the 2020 campaign, we want you to come here, come across the border, come to the United States. It's not Pritzker's fault who said, come to Illinois, come to Chicago. And we're going to talk about Brandon Johnson later on, mayor of Chicago. It's not their fault who invites these people. It's the fault of the states, especially the ones on the border, who are getting flooded first. And they're not saying, come here illegally. They're saying we are a sovereign state on the border of a sovereign country, and we cannot handle, nor are we required to receive untold numbers of illegal migrants into our state. They're saying, okay, fine, Illinois, fine, Texas, New York. You pick the state, you pick the sanctuary city or the sanctuary state, fine. if you are inviting these people in, if you are one of the reasons they are flooding our southern border here at Texas and Arizona and other states, fine. We will accommodate your wishes. We will put them up, we'll pay for the buses, and we'll send them to your state, to your city. Now he's pissed about it. The next thing I want to say about this is he's saying that these states, the red states, respective governors, representatives in the state, that they don't want to talk about or indulge in the possibility of comprehensive immigration reform. I want you, anybody listening or viewing, to please send a note, send a message. I want to hear comments. What the hell is comprehensive immigration reform? I've been hearing this phrase now for at least 20 years, probably going back 25 or 30 years, to be honest, more accurate. What is comprehensive immigration reform? Now, I will tell you this, what I think that a lot of the people on the left want it to be is mass amnesty. You got here, you got across the border, you're here, period. We don't care how you are, we don't care what your legal status is, you're now an American citizen. That's what I think many on the left, especially some of these elected officials, they want comprehensive immigration reform, quote unquote, to be. In other words, wipe the slate clean. You got here, the 10, the 15, the 20 million. We really don't know how many people are here illegally. We do not know. But now overnight, magic wine, you're all here legally now. You're all American citizens. That's what they want. They can't define comprehensive immigration reform. See, those of us who believe in the rule of law, what I call comprehensive is really more, it's a lot more specific. Stop the bleeding first. You cannot enter our country unless we give you authorization. And once you're here, you have to abide by our rules, which is a green card or temporary work status, whatever it is. And then you have to leave when we say you leave, or if you're going through the citizenship process, you can stay for that period of time. That's what I call immigration reform. Stop the bleeding. You can't come in here unless we give you authorization. And then once you're here, you follow our rules, period. Pretty clear. It sounds like that's what the Trump administration is going to follow, in addition to exporting many of the people who've come here illegally. Anthony, play the next clip, please.
In a few minutes, I get to sign, and I really mean I get to sign, 4 new bills that advance progress protecting immigrants in our state, all thanks to the champions that are with me, sitting behind me today. That starts with the Illinois Way Forward Act, strengthening The Illinois Way Forward Act strengthens the Trust Act by taking immigration status off the table in all state procedures where it has no relevance, putting greater teeth into those protections through the Attorney General's office, and making Illinois the second state in the nation to require all local officials to end partnerships with ICE by the end of this year.
Did you hear what he said? This new Way Forward bill that he so proudly signed into law. By the way, when you hear Way Forward, again, it's another platitude. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't mean anything, the new Way Forward. Now, again, I haven't read the bill, but I'll tell you this. I'm listening to some of the specifics. I assume he's being accurate about the bill he signed into law, that he takes the immigration status of these people off the table. And he said, in all places where it's not relevant. I'm so confused about what that means. Taking their immigration status off the table. In other words, it doesn't matter if you are here legally or not. We are going to disregard that. Now, the next part is, well, where is it relevant? You tell me, is it relevant for your voting rights? Is it relevant for employment? Is it relevant for getting a driver's license? Is it relevant for having to pay taxes on a local, state, federal level? I don't know. But taking it off the table for all places that are not relevant, boy, you talk about subjective. I have no idea what that means. The next part about this is ending up the partnership with ICE. Now, again, you talk about comprehensive, going back to comprehensive immigration reform, comprehensive. That's pretty comprehensive. So first of all, we're going to disregard whether you're here legally or not. So if you do that, you turn a blind eye to everything about this person, again, as far as their immigrant, their legal immigrant status or lack thereof. So if ICE is looking for a particular person that they know or believe came across the border illegally, came across without, authority, and the state government is not going to work with ICE at all, how do we know what violent criminal is? I'll use the phrase slipping through the cracks. I think that is, it's a misnomer. How do we know that we're not letting murderers and rapists and arsonists and kidnappers and traffickers of humans and traffickers of drugs? How do we know that we are impeding ICE's ability to apprehend these people if immigration status is off the table? How do we know? We don't know. So, matter of fact, we just saw that this animal, this evil, sadistic animal, got convicted for the murder of Laken Riley in Georgia just recently. Now, he was here. He was a known illegal alien. It's immigrant thing. I got to stop saying it myself. I've been trained. He was here illegally. He was flown around the country by the federal government, by your tax dollars and my tax dollars. He was known to be here. He already committed other crimes, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. He had already committed other crimes. But because there's this wall between ICE and so many state governments and local governments, he was off the radar when he ended up in Georgia, and then he murders Laken Riley. This is the problem. This is the problem with these platitudes about, it's off the, and their citizenship status doesn't matter. It's all BS, and it's all dangerous, and it's all turning a blind eye to the incredible crisis that they who claim to be sanctuary cities, sanctuary states have caused. It is not Greg Abbott in Texas. He did not invite people to cross his and the federal border illegally. He did not invite them. But his state and other states, Arizona, California, New Mexico, they're the ones that have to deal with this reality. They're the ones to deal with it. So now when they send people out there saying, look, we can't handle this. We didn't ask for it. We didn't want it. We're opposed to it. You take them because you say you want them. But those same states that say they want them are doing everything they can now to put this wall between the federal government and the local and state jurisdictions that could end up getting rid of some of these people, including the people like this monster who murdered Laken Riley. Anthony, play clip 3 of this windbag.
Answer your question by saying that, we were very clear in our communication with the White House that what we need is logistical support, that is help deciding where these folks ought to go, because they can't all go to Chicago and New York and DC. They need to go in places where there's even more help to offer. We, of course, are a welcoming state and have caring for the people who've arrived, but we can't bear the burden only ourselves.
Where do they go?
Communicate that. Well, let me also say that the White House has been told, we need resources. And you talk about the Congress being in chaos. The House of Representatives is opposed to any kind of comprehensive immigration reform. It seems like now is the moment to talk about border security and immigration reform. We want immigrants in the United States. We also want border security. It seems like there's a compromise there that can occur.
Yes.
But look, there are lots of places in the country where there are NGOs that can be of assistance to these folks who've arrived. They're here legally. They have refuge in the United States for the moment. My family were refugees to this country too. We ought to welcome them, put them through a process, and if they don't meet the requirements, they should be sent back.
Right.
And that's what the president is beginning to do now.
So this is a while back, of course, earlier this year. So again, we have him saying that it's someone else's problem. It's someone else's fault that Illinois can't handle this massive influx of people who've come across the border illegally. So what's he doing in this case? The same federal government that he wants to put a barrier between or up in front of when it comes to a person's immigration status. I'm talking about ICE trying to find the worst of the worst of these people that are here committing crimes. He's reaching out to the same federal government because he wants help. Why does he want help? Because again, he and others like him have created their own problem, and now they want to move these people around. And this reporter, to her credit, she said, to where? Where? In other words, this is the inconsistency, the dishonesty, and maybe the mental disconnect of these people. This same man, the same governor, is pointing fingers, and I'm going to use Texas because primarily that's where these bus loads and plane loads of people are coming from. He's pointing his finger at Texas when they move people around out of their state, who they didn't ask for, into his state. But now he's asking to move the people from his state to other states. It's not good when Texas does it, but it's great when Illinois does it. Why? Because we can't handle it. We just can't handle it. This is absolute dishonesty. It's deceitful. It's dishonest. It's dangerous. It disregards the rule of law. Causes problem. You blame it on somebody else. And then you want to engage in the same activities, i.e. moving people from your state to another, that you condemn Greg Abbott in Texas for doing. An absolute despicable disgrace. This man was elected governor of Illinois. You got what you paid for. Anthony, go ahead and play the next clip. And before we play it, so that this next clip is going to be of another wonderful leader in our country, and that's the governor of Colorado. And kind of along the same lines, but I want you to hear this, and of course, I'll give you my take on it. Anthony, hit it.
Do you support sanctuary city policies like Boulder's?
Look, as governor of Colorado, I'll prevent President Trump or any president from commandeering local law enforcement to enforce their Washington, D.C. priorities.
He insists sanctuary city policies don't protect violent criminals.
If somebody is arrested for a crime and they're not here legally, they should be deported. What we're talking about here are non-criminal immigrants, people who might have entered the country illegally and reside here and work here, but have not violated any of our other laws.
But cases like Ever Vias, who was released by Denver sheriff's deputies despite an ICE detainer and committed murder, refute that.
So, I don't know, case in point. This goes back to the same claim, or not the same claim, the same goal, strategy, policy that Pritzker in Illinois and so many other governors and mayors have about not working with ICE, putting a barrier up between them and ICE when it comes to people here who are here illegally that are in county jails, and there is no nexus, there's no cooperation between a county or city, whatever it may be, and ICE, who's trying to track these people down. That's an example right there in Colorado where this monster was released, committed a murder, but oh well, these things happen. These things slip through the cracks. Say, you know what, when it's your daughter, when it's your child, when it's your loved one who is murdered or raped or kidnapped, or it's your home, it's burglarized, it's your car stolen, you know what? It's just slipping the cracks. These things happen when we're trying to be so wonderful to invite the whole world to our city and to our state. And by the way, when it gets too busy and too full, then we'll blame somebody else and we'll try to send the same people to another state. This is the complete dishonesty of the Democrat Party as we know it today. Not the one that I grew up with, not the one that I used to be a part of, but the one we're dealing with today. I think on the list there, as far as polling, it was the number 2 issue. As far as economy and immigration, let's just say it was number 2. I think it was bigger than that. But this is one of the main reasons the Democrats got blown out in the presidential election and the Republicans gained the Senate and held on to the House, is because people are tired. People are not only tired of the reality of the crime and the economic impact, but you know what, ladies and gentlemen, they're tired of being lied to. They're tired of being made to feel guilty for saying, I want a secure border. And that's going to take us to our last 2 clips of this show. I think one of my least favorite people in politics, and by the way, that's a long list. That's a long list. But this is one of them. This is the current mayor of Chicago. And I'll let the clip play. Again, I'm playing, relatively long clips. I want you to get the context. Anthony, go ahead and play the good mayor, Brandon Johnson.
We inherited a humanitarian crisis with scores of buses with newly arrivals sent from the southern border without notice, care, or any coordination. This act was meant to destabilize Chicago as a welcoming sanctuary city.
You know what, Mr. Johnson, where were you when Governor Abbott of Texas was begging the federal government, the Biden administration, to seal the border? You're talking about the governor sending these immigrants to your city. Where were you when Greg Abbott was begging the federal government? See, he didn't have another state to talk to or to blame. He was being overrun at his border, the country's border, the southern border of Texas, by people from all over the world. All over the world, not just Central and South America, but from all over the world, coming through his border, coming through his cities, coming through his state. Why weren't you preaching like you are now about how wrong that was? Because you didn't give a damn. You were fine with it until he turned the tables and acquiesced to you and to other leaders like Pritzker in Illinois to say, we are a welcoming city. We welcome you here in Illinois. Come on in, come on up, until reality set in. This is why you are talking now. You talk about you inherited this crisis. Look, it was your party. It was your leadership. It was your philosophy that created the sanctuary city of Chicago, the sanctuary state of Illinois. You didn't inherit crap, sir. You were part of the problem. It was you, your ilk, your party who created this. And now you're blaming others when reality punches you in the gut. You blame others for this. You say that these other states sent you these people without any notice. What notice did these southern states, these border states, get from other countries who were sending not only people? I totally get it, that most people, the majority of these people coming, are simply coming from a better life. that you and I can probably agree on. They want a safer, more economically prosperous life for them and their families, their children. But what about the known thousands and tens of thousands of criminals that were released from various countries' prisons and sent here on purpose to drain those countries of their criminals, crossing our southern borders? What about those people that you told to come, that Pritzker told to come, that Joe Biden told to come? What about those people? Are you responsible for that? Is your party responsible for that? Do you give a damn about the rule of law, about violating federal law when it comes to national immigration? I haven't heard a word from you about that, sir, and it's probably a reason. So we're going to finish with this, and this will be the longest clip, and it's the last one to show. I want you to hear this. And this is from an individual, it's a citizen in Chicago, who's actually at a Chicago City Council meeting, and Brandon Johnson, of course, being the mayor, is part of the city council. I want you to listen to this woman. I think it's about 4 minutes long. I'm going to get out of the way, let you listen to this. And this is not specifically about the southern border, but it's about the impact. It's about the impact of specific policies. It's about the impact of the disregard for the rule of law and what effect it has on individual lives, communities, states, and our nation. Anthony, play the clip.
I am P. Ray of the 37th Ward. Chicago Red is our organization. Because we started this session with a prayer, I want to start my comment with the scripture. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if any provide not for his own, and specifically for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel." So I want to talk to y'all today about not going to hell. In the 37th Ward, there was a family, the Jones family. Amarie Jones was standing in her family building that they've owned for 40 years, doing a TikTok dance with her mother. A bullet came through the window, hit her in the neck. She fell to the ground in front of her mother and bled to death. A month ago, on the Chicago mugshot page, her mother was on that page. Her mother had on her daughter's rest in peace t-shirt. She washed it so many times that it was completely faded out. She was completely high, out of her mind, and the charge was possession. Now, the first $51 million that this council gave to the migrants came from the opioid settlement funds. I am here on behalf of the Jones family, on behalf of the 37th Ward, on behalf of Black Chicago, on behalf of the entire city, to ask you all to vote no and put that money back in the opioid settlement fund. We need that money in my neighborhood. We need that on my block. That woman should not be at Cook County Jail because she's grieving over a random act of violence that caused her to lose her child in front of her face, when the city of Chicago has millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to give to people who ain't paid a dime into the tax base. We've been in my building for 52 years. We're about to pay some more taxes. The Jones family has been in their building for 45 years, paying taxes every year on time. So I'm asking y'all to use our tax money for our people. We need it. We got people leaning. We got people rocking. We got overdosing. We got pass out lines. You live on the west side, Mayor Johnson. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We need the money for us. We need opioid treatment on the west side of Chicago. We are the headquarters of the cartel, and everybody in here knows it. They selling more drugs than the law can allow, and y'all giving money back to them because they traffic those people up here, so we paying them going and coming. Absolutely not. We pay too much. It costs too much money to live in this city. Help Wanda Jones. Help every other grieving mother who feels like she has to go get high to get over the loss of her child. This is a woman who lived in that house. She still sleeps in that living room where her daughter passed out and bled to death. So I'm asking y'all to say no, put these people on the back burner, and put the money back in the opioid fund. We need that money. Thank y'all.
I want you to think about something in regards to that clip. I said it was 4 minutes, so it's only 3 minutes. 3 minutes packed, chock full of truth. That was back in April of this year. and you saw that woman wearing a MAGA hat. And my point is not about MAGA specifically, things like this, but I don't know what that person's politics were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. This is why I say how impactful the immigration issue is, and certainly was, with this most recent presidential election. Because there are people today that are voting conservative who probably would never have thought to do so in the very recent past. Because issues like this are real, they are tangible, they are specific, they impact lives with great effect. They impact communities. This is why the rule of law matters, because when the violation or the disregard of the rule of law affects you specifically, your family, this impacts what you do in a political sense. Not to mention, following the rule of law is just a moral right thing to do. I'm talking right now in a political sense. If the Democrat Party wants to keep playing this game, if they want to keep balkanizing America, if they want to keep breaking people up into groups, assigning you to a group based on your skin color or gender or sexual orientation, whatever it is, they're going to continue to lose. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Period. When innocent nursing students are brutally murdered by a monster who, number one, should not have been here in the first place, and number two, could have been apprehended if the federal government was doing the right thing, and on top of that, was not impeded by local or state governments in the apprehension of such monster. And there are many, many, many more out there. I only mentioned the one murder today on this show. We know I could spend an hour just talking about similar crimes across this country committed by people who should not be here. And this way forward bill, this path forward, we heard from Kamala Harris, oh, we're looking forward, we're not going back. It's all platitudes, ladies and gentlemen. It means nothing. It means nothing. So I want you to think about what that woman said. I want you to think about the effect that these horrible immigration policies have had over the last 4 and 8 and 10 years, really longer now in this country, and how it's going to impact the future. So with that said, say all the time, we believe in, we support the rule of law. Please remember that without the rule of law, without adhering to the rule of law, we become cities like these sanctuary cities that live in chaos and put their residents in unspeakable danger. For your illumination, I am the Chief Mark Garrett. Please subscribe, share this with everybody you can. We have got to get the word out. We have got to make sure that as a nation, we are first and foremost following the rule of law. God bless you. See you next time.